Page 21. These snow-clad summits constitutes the purest white that has been permanently frozen, and any stain that is left on this incomparable white color is swept away by the eastern wind, and the white peaks stand out better in their spotless glory. But even that white color becomes but black as crow while compared to a single hand of Helena. In short, Helena's complexion is so very pure and white that even one of her hands, not to speak of her entire body, makes the snow-white peaks of Taurus as black as a crow. Notes: congealed, frozen. Taurus, a chain of mountains running through Asia from west to east, forming the southern margin of the great tableland of Central Asia. Fanned with, swept by. Para. The inflated protestations by Demetrius culminate in the comic exaggeration of the final image. A white skin is highly prized. Compare Othello 5.2.4, that white skin of her than snow. 29. A trim exploit, a manly enterprise, to conjure ... all to make you sport. 3i.2i.162-66. Demetrius, who is under the influence of the juice of love in idleness, anointed by Oberon in his sleep, begins to praise the complexion of Helena in a hyperbolic language. The poor Helena, who is already harassed by the persistent love of Lysander, whose conduct she cannot account for because she is ignorant of the action of magic flower on his eyes, is surprised and shocked by the sudden change of mind on the part of Demetrius, who had before spurned her love for him. Helena loves Demetrius, no doubt, but she was not prepared for such a sudden and extremely passionate outburst of Demetrius. She now thinks that Demetrius has joined Lysander in a conspiracy to mock and insult her. She addresses both of them and says with bitter irony that it is indeed a very fine example of their courage to ridicule an unfortunate woman in this way. It is an act befitting a man, forsooth, to deride a harassed maid so as to make her weep. She means that by making love to her at the same time, both of them are guilty of discourtesy. Honorable men cannot then torment a woman so as to make her shed tears. Nobody of a noble birth or of gentle, polished nature could dream of insulting a tender virgin in like manner, and of exhausting the power of endurance of one so forlorn and unfortunate as she is now. The two young men, Lysander and Demetrius, together torture and insult her by their passionate outburst of love. Out of fun, or in other words, simply because they enjoy harassing and disturbing a woman. Para. Notes: the lines constitute an example of comic irony. Helena is ignored of the effect of the juice of magic flower, and tricks played on Lysander and Demetrius by Puck and Oberon. Puck by mistake and Oberon sincerely, but the audience know. This creates a situation highly comic. The two woo the same woman, as Puck says, enjoying the situation. Trim, pretty, clever, used ironically. Manly, befitting a man, also used ironically. Conjure, bring, as by an evil spell. Derision, mockery. Sought, quality. Extort. Patience, force her by their torture to endure suffering. All, sport, wholly to amuse themselves. 30. We, Hermia, like two artificial gods. had been incorporate. 3i.2i 209-14. These lines are addressed to Hermia by Helena. Helena is now attacked by both Demetrius and Lysander simultaneously with their vehement love, and she is sorely harassed. She could not understand the reason for the love of Lysander, who had so long loved her friend Hermia, page 22. Nor could she guess the reason for Demetrius' sudden change of mind. For so long she had been totally against her. She ascribes their conducts to a conspiracy on their part to ridicule and insult her. Now appears Hermia on the scene and addresses Lysander in loving terms, but is spurned openly by him. Helena, in whose presence all this takes place, cannot almost believe her eyes and thinks that all these are stage-managed and premeditated, and that Hermia is also in league with the two men against her and is bent upon insulting her too. This disturbs and torments her, as she and Hermia have the closest fright right from their childhood. She addresses her old friend in very bitter and scathing terms, recalling the happy old days of intimacy. She reminds Hermia of the time when they were so very intimate that they used to sit on the same cushion and worked at the same flower in their embroidery, basing on the same pattern or symbol. They never thought of doing their own separate bits of embroidery on separate patterns, sitting on separate seats. They did a part of the same flower with their needles like two creates of the same work of art. They were absolutely one at heart at the time and were not inimical to each other as they are now when Hermia insults her and also threatens her. She also reminds Hermia of the time when they sang the same song in unison of note, embracing each other in such rapt intimacy that their hands, sides, voices, and even minds seemed to belong to but a single body. They were two different persons singing, but in fact like a single individual. Notes: artificial gods. Highly skilled in art. NB. Artificial is used in the sense of art, creating, not in the present scene. Sampler. Pattern. Both in one key. Both in unison of note. Imperfect harmony. Imperfect harmony. Incorporate. United in one body. 31. Two of the first, like coats in heraldry, crest. 3i.2i.219-20. These lines are spoken by Helena when she reminds Hermia of their intimate friendship in younger days. Helena is surprised and annoyed by the fulsome love-making of Lysander. Then Demetrius, who was so long unfavorable to Helena, is also now deeply in love with her, thanks to administration of love juice by Oberon. This too is a source of annoyance to Helena, who, ignorant of the cause of this change, thinks Demetrius has joined hands with Lysander in mocking her. She also thinks that Hermia is also a member of this conspiracy to ridicule and harass her. She reminds Hermia of their close intimacy during their school days when they were two separate individuals only in name but were one single entity, as they had, for all practical purposes, one mind and one heart. As in heraldry, there are double coats of arms which, belonging to man and wife as one person, within quote, due but to one, unquote, have but me, crest, So they two, Helena and Hermia, having two different bodies, belong to one heart. NB. Here is a comparison between two bodies and two coats in heraldry. Para. The first is the first tincture, T-I-N-T-U-R-E, color, mentioned in the elaborate process of describing a coat of arms. According to the rules of heraldry, it thus refers to the field, the background of the coat of arms. The word partition, line 209, suggests the divisions of a coat, parted, uncoat, or quartered shield. A parted 208 shield is one divided into equal halves. So Helena's image is of a shield divided into halves of the same color, two of the first, and thus in effect not differentiated. The coat of arms is granted by right to one person, due but to one, and surmounted by a single crest, a heart, H-A-R-T, or heart, H-E-A-R-T. 32. I, do, exclamation, persevere, colon, counterfeit, sad looks, make me such an argument, stop. 3i.2i, 242 to 47. Page 23. Helena speaks to Hermia out of bitterness of heart because she thinks that Hermia has also joined with Lysander and Demetrius to harass and insult her. She is full of wrath because Hermia despises her for her miserable lot, while she expects from her old friend pity and sympathy. Hermia is naturally amazed at Helena's attitude and language, and says, wondering that she does not understand what Helena means by her venomous outpourings against her. Para. Here, Helena, now thoroughly convinced that Hermia pretends innocence and ignorance, flares up again and replies with renewed irony. She asks Hermia to try her best to put on a false appearance of sadness so long as Helena is present. But as soon as she turns her back, Hermia will no doubt make faces at her. Now that she is in conspiracy with Lysander and Demetrius, they will wink at each other the moment Helena is out of sight. In other words, they will make sinister signs at each other with their eyes, enjoying the disfeature of Helena. They will thus encourage each other to keep up their jesting at her. This game, for example, the game of having fun at the expense of her distress, has been well managed and will now be recorded as a good, enjoyable story. Para. After giving vent to her feelings in this ironical vein, Helena becomes serious again and tells them that if they have any sense of pity, good or sympathetic feeling, or any decent manners, they should not make an unfortunate woman like her the subject of their fun and ridicule. Notes. Persevere. P-E-R-S-E-V-E-R. Dash, persevere, P-E-R-S-E-V-E-R-E, dash, accented on the second syllable, persevere. Persevere is accented on the first syllable, became common usage during the 17th century. Sad, serious, hold, up, keep up, maintain the jest, argument, subject of contention. Sweet jest, the joke which is very enjoyable to them. Sport, fun. Chronicled, recorded. Grace, good and sympathetic feeling. 33. Now I perceived that she had compared, How low am I, thou painted maypole, ? Speak, colon. 3i.2i, 308 to 14. These links spoken by Hermia to Helena. Hermia has definitely come to know that Lysander loves Helena and not her. She accuses the latter of having stolen her heart, and Helena replies with all the vehemence that a woman is capable of, and calls Hermia a counterfeit and a puppet. Para. Hermia resents being called a puppet. She thinks she has discovered the game that Helena has so long been playing. She now finds that Helena has all along been hinting at invidious comparison between herself and Hermia as regards her superior stature. It is with her tall stature, so Hermia thinks, that Helena has been successful in winning Lysander over to admire her more than Hermia. Then she asks Helena if she has really grown so very high in the eyes of Lysander simply because Hermia is low, that is dwarfish. Para. Hermia means to say that Helena has become high, that is superior or tall in stature in the estimation of Lysander, because she herself is low, that is inferior or short stature. Then she jibes at Helena's height, at her pink and white complexion by calling her, quote, painted maple, unquote, and plies her with a threatening question as to how low she, Hermia, exactly is, meaning that however low she might be, she is not too low, short in stature, as not to pluck out Helena's eyes with her nails. Page 24. Notes. In these lines, Hermia is not only annoyed and angry with Helena for calling her puppet, but threatens her with attacking and beating her with her nails. Here she is aggressive and ferocious. Para. The two girls differ in coloring, in height, and in temper, a pointed and comic sequel to Helena's image of them as a double cherry, 203 to 14 above. Para. Quote, puppet, question mark, why so, question mark, unquote. Hermia is taken aback by Helena's use of puppet, her first term of contempt. Compare, comparison, personage, stature, prevailed with him, won him over. High, there is a pun on the word here, high dignity, high stature. So also with quote, low, unquote. Painted maple. Maple, tall and slender, was often painted with stripes of red and white. Helena's tall and slender body and her pink-white complexion make Hermia compare her disparagingly to a painted maple. 34. And so far am I glad... esteem a sport. 3i.2i.373 to 75. This is said by Puck in reply to Oberon's charge of negligence against him for committing the mistake of applying the juice of love in idleness to the eyes of Lysander. Demetrius fell in love with Helena due to the effect of the magic flower. Lysander, on account of the mistakes committed by Puck, is already over head and ears in love with the same maiden. As a result, when the two lovers meet in the wood outside Athens, in the second scene of the third act, they start quarreling, and the two young maidens quarrel too. Things threaten to assume serious proportion when Demetrius and Lysander challenge each other to a mortal duel and go to another part of the wood to fight it out between them and decide who will finally win the love of Helena. The two maidens, after bitter exchange of words, leave the place. Para. Oberon now blames Puck for all these complications and confusions. Puck, while exonerating himself, cannot give up his mischievous attitude and says the above lines as a kind of justification of his conduct. After pointing out to Oberon that the mistake is due to the fact that Oberon mentioned only the Athenian garments by which to identify the right young man, that is Lysander, Puck says that after all he is glad that events happened in the manner they did, as the boisterous quarrelling of the two young men and the two young maidens is considered by him as excellent fun and amusement. It does not matter, he means to say, that things have taken a serious turn and consequences threaten to be terrible. They have provided to him good enjoyment. Notes: sought, turn out, jangling, discord. 35. For knights, swift dragons, with black-browed knight. 3i, 2i, 405 to 13, para. These lines are said by Puck in the second scene of the third act. Puck warns Oberon that the dawn is fast approaching and whatever is to be done has to be done quickly. He points out that the knight's chariot, supposed to be drawn by wakeful dragons, is cutting at a great speed through the clouds, signifying that night is soon to disappear. The morning star, which is the forerunner of the goddess of the dawn, Aurora, Aurora, is also seen in the eastern sky. This is the time when the ghosts hurry back in troops to their graves in the churchyards from where they come, and the condemned spirits of these persons who committed suicide and were buried at crossroads, or of those drowned, are also getting ready to go back to their respective graves, for they fight shy of looking in the brightness of day at the evidence of their own death, and therefore they avoid daylight and live in the eternal darkness of night. Page 25, note: dragons, the chariot of Cynthia, goddess of the moon, were supposed to be drawn across the sky by dragons. Aurora, goddess of the dawn, harbinger, messenger, forerunner of the dawn, Venus, the morning star. Churchyards, graveyards attached to churches, which are commonly supposed to be the haunts of ordinary ghosts. Damned spirits, crossways and floods. These refer to certain ideas associated in Shakespeare's days with the death caused by suicide and by drowning. Those who committed suicide were formerly buried in crossways and not in holy churchyards, and their spirits were supposed to be condemned. So were also the spirits of those who were killed by drowning. These ghosts of the damned disappear each morning before the ghosts of those accorded Christian burial in churchyards. Shames, SHMES, evidence of their shameful acts. Death by suicide or drowning was considered as crime, and so they are damned spirits. Consort with, live in the company of. Next, Act 4, Scene 1.